so dearly, but she never once flinched. She said, Dad, I love you. I'll be there for you no matter what. And I'm so proud to have had her with me through all this process. And then finally, Emma, who turned 14 recently, Emma Claire, and Jack, who just turned 12, who I take care of every day. And I've not been able to see them quite as much, but I see them in the morning. I get their breakfast ready, get them off to school, and then we get home at night and we all eat supper together. And I love them both so dearly, and they're such an important part of every day of my life. And then finally, my precious Quinn. Who I love more than any of you could ever imagine. And I am so close to and so grateful for her.
That's John Edwards outside the courthouse this afternoon. Joining us now, two people have been covering the trial from the beginning, Jo Johns and Diane Dimond. She's an investigative reporter for Newsweek and the Daily Beast. Her latest piece of reporting is headlined, Why Johnny Walked on a Mistrial. Also, criminal defense attorney Mark Geragos joins us and senior legal analyst Jeff Toobin. Is it possible, Jeff, that the Justice Department could refile charges against John Edwards?
Absolutely.
Do you think it's likely?
No, well, it's possible. I mean, they have the legal right to say tomorrow we are going to retry him on the on those 5 counts. I think it's unlikely. I think cooler heads will prevail. This was a very marginal case to start with. Very unusual use of the campaign finance laws. They had their shot.
You say marginal because?
Because it was not a conventional crime. There has never been a Justice Department prosecution for similar activity. You know, the deterrent effect of this case is negligible because the facts are just so odd, and especially in the post-Citizens United world, where the Supreme Court is essentially deregulating American campaigns. The idea that they would try to put John Edwards in prison again after failing so dramatically and spending so much time and so much money, I just think it's time to close this shop.
Mark, the fact that the jury couldn't reach a verdict on 5 of the 6 counts, does that tell you anything about the case itself? I mean, how often does this happen?
It happens quite frequently, but I will tell you that the interesting thing, and Jeff just hinted at it or actually said it, was when they brought this case, it was a pre-Citizens United world. Now you've got a situation, and I don't know what the split was, but I'm sure somebody on this panel will, but I can't imagine if they found him not guilty on the 1 count, frankly that count was ridiculous to begin with, that the split wasn't in favor of not guilty. And I can't imagine that in a post-Citizens United world where, you know, basically money equals speech, corporations are persons, that you're going to now try to put a person in speech for taking money. It makes absolutely no sense. Remember, this thing was started also not so much by the Department of Justice, but by a politically motivated U.S. attorney who who brought these charges and thought he was going to climb onto John Edwards' back and make some fame and make a name for himself. So this thing was politically motivated to begin with. It's legally suspect from begin with. The charges themselves are ridiculous. The fact that the jury could not convict him, I think, speaks volumes about it. This is federal court where they brag that they get 98% or 99% guilty either pleas or convictions. So I think this tells you all you need to know about the strength of this case.
Joe, there's been some people who wondered whether the jury could separate, you know, the obvious facts in which John Edwards has done some lousy things, you know, to his family, to his supporters, to the lies he's told, and whether or not he broke the law in the way that the state was alleging. Clearly, the jury, you know, at least some on the jury were able to separate maybe his personal behavior from whether or not it was criminal behavior.
That absolutely seems to be the case, and it also seems the case that this jury really realized just how tough this thing was on the facts and the law. And, you know, this is a very polarized state for a lot of reasons. And just looking at that jury, when they were first put up there, it was hard to see how they were going to reach any other decision but a mistrial. They come from such far and wide, diverse socioeconomic places here in this state. That was the first thing. The body language, as it went on, only got worse. You saw certain people just exhausted and drooping. And then there was a question of teams, whether they had formed two different teams, let's say a yay team and a nay team. And the judge actually twice instructed them not to do that, not to form groups and fight with each other. So it looked like this was quite a high hurdle for this jury to climb, and we saw what the result was today.
And Diane, there was a moment when the defense, when the prosecution first rested their case, that John Edwards turned to his lawyer and basically said something along the lines of, "Is that all they got?" Clearly, he seemed confident at the point when the prosecution rested their case.
Yeah, I remember that very well. I wrote about it in the Daily Beast. He turned to his attorney and said, "That's the